Hello guys, welcome back to another video. This video will be scrambled up into pieces because it's not that organized. As you can see from my upload dates, it's not doing that well because I'm taking care. But I'll try to manage my time properly and make this video as fast as possible to give to you guys. But the main themes of this whole entire video would be the new FaceIQ app that he's creating it with CreatingAttractive, quite the no pun intended moment, but also why this is so revolutionary. Well, if you were to go look at the UMax app, it does sort of assess your face, but at face value, well, that's another no pun intended moment. It assesses your face at face value, but it doesn't really give you that facial analysis, the health indicators, the angularity, the features. Let's see what else. The facial harmony, how could I forget about that? Again, as I said in my Looksmaxing ad video, I was saying that, hey, in order to assess someone's face, you must understand, well, your proportions, which is your harmony, and your health indicators, which consists of dimorphism and health indicators, which is your skin quality, how angular your face is your nose fat or not, and generally the more angular you are, you're going to look more sharp. Yeah, that's just the overview, right? In order to just assess a person's face. And UMax doesn't really do that on an in-depth level, unlike FaceIQ's app with CreatingAttractive. But again, how does this still support my statement of this whole app being revolutionary for the whole entire Looksmaxing community? Well, simply put, Looksmaxing in general is just the ideology, but also the action and the self-disciplinary action of ascending one's looks through various different methods and tackling different biological mechanisms, but also just tackling on mechanisms of surgery. So there's soft maxing and hard maxing. So how does this draw back to our original point? Well, another thing about Looksmaxing is just disproving the normalized, propagated virtual signaling of, oh no, your looks don't matter at all. Looks are all subjective. There is literally no objective, substantiable basis that will lead to a claim of, oh no, your looks are not actually subjective. They're actually objective. While I'm going to create a video on this in the later future, the summary for that video would be, yes, there is subjectivity to looks, but there's also an objective basis. Think about it as this. Attractiveness is objective, but attractivity is subjective, which means that the lens that we view a person's face is subjective, but the face in and of itself is objective, and I'll be elaborating on this in another video. But this app will reinforce my statement that we will topple this virtual signaling norm of that looks do not matter, even though they do, and there are no objective consensus and basis for looks, which is completely false. Because there is a lot of scientific evidence and studies that say that this is false. And there's a lot of deductive reasoning that say that this conclusion and statement or take, claim, ideology, conclusion, or anything of that sort is false. And it is false. People just want to protect their feelings, say, no, you're who you are. The beauty is in the eye of the beholder, even though that is objectively false. But also sort of true in terms of the lens of seeing the person's attractiveness. So this is a very highly nuanced topic that the general populace cannot necessarily understand from their lack of reasoning. Now, drawing back to how this is so revolutionary, this app will basically lead down normies to a rabbit hole of understanding how this app works and the basis of what these studies are and the basis of why we find things attractive, why this app says you're attractive, what are the studies behind this, what are the deductive reasonings that are behind this, and all that stuff. So we will create more of a cultural shift in denying one's own reality by coping and by saying, oh no, it doesn't matter. You are in control of your life, even though your genetics quite literally determine your life by such a heavy degree. And nobody likes to admit this because then it will make people feel that they have no control over their life. And I'd say that what they're coming from is valid, but it isn't the right thing to do. The right thing to do to solve a problem is to not deny a problem. A problem cannot necessarily fix by itself. You have to tackle a problem. You have to notice a problem. For society to even shun the people who advocate or who speak out to a problem that is substantiated with empirical evidence, but yet for society to deny it and to shun that person is such a miserable state to see that the world is in. For the general consensus of the population to deny one's own reality, to live in a world full of lies, it is quite concerning to me because I am part of the species of people. Because aren't we supposed to be these intellectual organisms that far surpass animals? Aren't we supposed to be these intellectual organisms that has technology, that has society, that has democracy, but that also has corruption, but also intellectualism, literature, history, philosophy, agriculture, martial arts, biology, advanced technological weaponry? We are all capable of this stuff. And to add to that, mathematics, one of the epitomes of thought experiments using the perceived language of our universe. We are all capable of that, but yet we are impeded by the rest of society wanting to deny their own reality. That is very concerning because I am part of the species, by the way. I am part of the species. It does not, like, looking at the rest of society, I'm like, are we really the same people? Are we really the part of the same species? Hold up real quick. Are you really human? Are we really human? Basing everything or almost everything off of emotional impulses and not cold and calculative logical thinking to solve social economic problems or just cultural problems in general? And one of those problems is denying one's own reality. So this app will just bring more or less a cultural shift because it's so easily accessible, and that will lead down a portion of people who have used this app or who will use this app to understand how attractivity works, how attractiveness works, how evolutionary cues shape what we find things attractive, how cultural propaganda has shifted us or a specific region, how they perceive things as attractive, the biological evolutionary reasons mixed with cultural reasons of why a general populace finds something attractive. And all of this to come up with a crude, brutal understanding that, hey, there are some things that you can't change. And this brings me to my previous point, that this will reinforce people to understand that to solve a problem first is to actively voice it out and know that it exists. A problem cannot be solved by pretending it does not exist. A problem cannot be solved if you were to shun a person for advocating or for speaking out against a problem and they're labeled as offensive. I think us humans, we are more cognitive than that. And this app will be one of the reinforcing factors for this cultural shift. But again, the whole entire space of ideologies, to put it in more of a broad way, is hyper-emotionalized, hyper-feminized in today's society. That's all I have to say. And this will bring that more or less an emotional, less calculative shift where you have to base your understandings more on deductive reasoning and to understand brutal truths that are much true, but that doesn't necessarily make you a spiteful, negative, hateful person that wants to drag someone down. Often when you're listing down brutal truths, you'll be labeled as someone who is hateful, as someone who is negative, even though most people, at least for us, we would like to list down what is observable in society and say, hey, why are you guys acting like this doesn't exist? Even though we could clearly see it in our own eyes. We're just not emotional to the point where we can't handle such reality.
But what if the truth is too much for them?
If the truth shall them, let them. For a life that shatters beneath the weight of reality was never truly living. Those who fear truth are not victims. They are architects of their own destruction, begging for the comfort of lies as their world collapses. Immanuel Kant.
No one is more hated than the man who tells the truth. It shatters illusions, breaks fragile egos, and strips away the comfort of lies. Most people live in a cage, not because they're trapped, but because they choose to. They fear the light more than the chains. To be awakened is no delight, it's a burden. The philosopher who sees the world as it truly is must carry that knowledge alone, while those around him mock him for questioning shadows. Real wisdom isn't welcomed, it's resisted, feared, and often silenced. But to live in ignorance is to die before death. To pursue truth, even when it isolates you, even when it costs you everything, that is the path of the mind that refuses to bow to falsehood. Plato.
But again, explaining brutal truth is synonymous with being a negative person. But at least for me, if I were to say a brutal truth and people perceive it as offensive or negative, it is negative. But I am pointing out something that I observe as something that's negative to voice it out so people can understand, hey, there's a problem. How can we solve it? Instead of saying, oh no, we should just not even hear what he's trying to say and just deny this reality, which will never even fix the problem to begin with. So that is the video. Again, I'm going to put the link to the website FaceIQ Labs in the description, so go look at it. You could go sign up and you could basically upload images and test the software until it becomes near perfect. Thank you guys for watching. Peace out.